This is the Parent Portal Show.
You've seen prices rise from the dinner table to the pump, but Allstate agents are seeing ways to save you money on insurance. From starting a new policy to bundling coverage or even driving safely, Allstate agents know how to maximize your savings. They'll share their knowledge as they help you personalize your coverage. Because when it comes to seeing all the ways to save, Allstate agents do it best.
Mike Hammer has over 35 years as an Austin area Allstate agent. Call 512-343-6994 or visit MikeHammer@allstate.com.
Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
All right, James, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. We've got a great show today. We've got an interview with a parent who is in the interesting opportunity to watch his kid go on and do some great things. And I think we're going to have a chance to talk about name, image, and likeness with him and some of the thoughts that he has.
I'm very excited about it. Our community, if you will, that we've talked about in our past few times together is continuing to grow. And as we grow and learn, man, it's just amazing some of the things that we're discovering and how quickly things are changing in this world.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things is I knew this guy and coached with him out on the fields. I can't place him at the moment, so I'll be interested to see him when he appears on our call. But we share some common background and common thoughts, and it's so just a fun day today. But let's get started with the news today.
Wow, well, it's been a very busy week in the world of NIL. The Masters were just finished this past weekend, and how timely is it that we have a amateur, Sam Bennett from just down the road at College Station,
Texas A&M. Yeah.
Texas A&M went out and had a phenomenal tournament.
Yeah,
he came into the tournament as a ranked amateur, and one of the things that he was able to do was went out the first 2 days and shot 68.
Yeah.
And immediately got the attention of not just, the golfers, but he got the attention of all the sponsors that are out there that are looking at athletes and saying, how can we work with them and alongside them?
Yeah.
And for him, he wound up being paired in like one of the final groups.
He did.
Both on Saturday and Sunday, which meant his airtime visibility went off the charts. They say that by the end of that tournament, he was garnering about 8 hours of coverage.
Sure.
Which is like not a 30-second, commercial in between holes. And so as a result, they project, and this, it's something that we'll talk about, is like what they're projecting his NIL deal worth is went from already entering into this tournament was a six-figure kind of thing, all the way to a seven-figure, just from one tournament. And man, I mean, Sam Bennett has become a household name.
Yeah,
and what's interesting about that, Stephen, is that he's in a place where he came in already having some NIL deals with like manufacturers, clothing wear, if you will, and he's now taken that to other levels. And as a result of his performance, which we go back to a lot, he's been able to take that passion that he's had to a performance level to now where his brand is just bringing in so much money.
Yeah. No, that was really exciting to watch. I got to watch it a little bit. I'm not a huge TV golf fan, but I did make a point. It is the Masters, and he got some quality airtime. Of course, he was the talk. The fact that he was already playing at that level was amazing, but for him to perform so well was part of it too. So I think he did really well. It was really exciting, and it was just fun to watch. It made for a fun day, and to your point, it also gave him a chance to do things and make sure that he was there in the midst of it. And who knows when this NIL stuff's going to go.
Well, I mean, the whole point is you noticed.
Yeah.
And so if you noticed who was sponsoring him. And mission accomplished if you're a sponsor,
What they want.
That's what they want. They want you to know that we're associated with this winner, and as a result, be a winner with us. So that's pretty interesting. So a couple other things is that kind of going back to last week when we were talking about the Yukon.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we were able to kind of tease out of that from that is how things have quickly changed for the players that were on both the men's and the women's Yukon team. And what we found is that the women's Yukon basketball star Paige Buchers, and I hope I'm saying that right, Buchers. She has had an NIL deal for the past couple of years. She was the player of the year in 2021.
Okay.
And what she has done is she's taking her UIL monies and given back to the community. And it's amazing how, most people have just kind of looked at these NIL deals as something that, it's just for the athlete. And she's taking that a step further and saying, it's not just about me, it's about my community, about we.
Yeah.
And she's gone back into her community where they have, food issues. And she's given back and setting up food pantries where she can help with her NIL money, help those that are in those struggles, with food problems, and able to give them a different look, a different handout, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. And for
a kid, let's be clear, at this age, a lot of kids are all into me, right? And for this kid, this young athlete, to have that kind of motivation and focus to think about others in that way and to support a cause like that and to take some of the joy and reward that she has from the sport and apply it back into her own community, I think that goes a long way.
It does. It just speaks to the person that she is, the program that she's a part of, but probably a lot to the sponsors that have gotten behind her.
Sure.
And I mean, the doors that she opened through her performance, through her personality, through her works.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, not only are we sponsoring a great athlete, we're sponsoring a great person.
Yeah.
And those deals have just continued to come in, and she's been able to help more people as a result of it.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So
accolades to her parents there too.
Yeah, there's good upbringing there somewhere,
there.
Right? And so another Yukon story, they were pretty big last week, is Adama Sanogo. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about he was kind of in the news because he's not from the United States. Right? And so NIL deals kind of like were not being offered or not
allowed, right?
Not allowed, right? And so as a result, he was like kind of left out, even though he was a great performer on the stage and, was out there and able to do everything that he could in basketball. He was not being in the market, if you will, for an NIL deal. He got approached by Sunoco, the gasoline company that sponsors NASCAR. He got approached by them, and they found a workaround. So they have entered their agreement outside the United States.
Wow.
And so he is now sponsored by Sunoco Oil. And as a result, they are like using his NIL, name, image, and likeness. They've put jerseys with his number on it and Sunoco.
More power to him.
Yeah. But the part that's just very revealing is like they will the people that want to get behind this are finding workarounds from like, just a roadblock. No is an answer, but not the answer for these people. They're finding ways, companies are finding ways to come around and say, hey, we want to sponsor you. Let's do it. And so, it's so interesting how they've been able to do that.
Yeah.
And as a result, now it's opened another door for athletes from other countries.
Love it.
Yeah. So last one is that the University of Miami has gotten a lot of attention. And as a result of all that attention,
The Cavender twins. Yeah.
The Cavender twins, and just the whole collective for them and how it works,
Now,
And
didn't I read that there were over 100 players that got into trouble last year with that whole recruiting process that they had gone through? And I say 100. I'll go back and make sure we get our research correct on this, but it looked like there were over 100 violations, I think is what I read, has happened with the University of Miami.
yeah, and it's not just across one sport; it's a collective of sports, and it's all money driven. At the end of the day, they're trying to get great athletes, but it's very much, it's like the collective is working independent of it, and when you're throwing that kind of money,
That's not good.
When you're throwing that kind of money, it is incredible what they are able to attract,
Sure.
if you will. And so going into looking at their NIL and how they have their set up is they're working with a group called Open Doors and Altus Sport. And basically what they're doing is with their athletes, and I'm sure they aren't the only one, they're just the one that's kind of the spotlight's on, is their athletes are coming in and they're saying to them, hey, we're going to help you build your brand.
Yeah.
And from that, we're going to help you go out and promote that brand, and we're going to teach you, and I mean, they're taking classes on it. We're going to teach you how to go out and get these marketing deals with these different groups and companies. And the thing that is interesting that I saw from them is like, we're going to be okay with our permission, with the University of Miami's permission, to be able to brand us alongside you in that. As opposed to like Stephen Nold, great baseball player. It's going to be like Stephen Nold, University of Miami, great baseball player, and the only thing that they're asking is that we get to approve who you do that with.
Who you work with.
Yeah. And so interesting.
Yeah, I have some concerns there. I'm not sure that's going to benefit the players all the times. I mean, there's going to be times, I guess there's two ways to look at this. One is that the schools will probably bring good brands, good affiliations to the table. That does give a chance, and they'll have all the resources with the attorneys and the representation. So I get that. But the other challenge will be there probably are some opportunities that will get overlooked or just won't make the cut that maybe an athlete would have a chance to explore. So, it's the wild, wild west still out there, Coach, and I think we're going to be it's going to be a few years before we get this all to shake out the way it needs to.
Yeah, it is. And just if you get a little bit of time and you got a little bit of energy, look up athlete Kevin Snyder.
Yep.
He's one of their track athletes in Miami, and see how they're branding him. And it's interesting as a dad. It's like, I don't know the first thing about branding,
right?
A player and all this kind of stuff. What they are doing is they're putting him in a position where they're teaching him how to brand himself, but they're also marketing him. They're doing a lot of the marketing side of this,
right?
So that a dad, a mom is not out there trying to invent, the wheel. They're out there and they're doing that for them, and they're giving them opportunities to be able to go, not just like make an appearance at a local restaurant.
Right.
They're giving them opportunities on social medias. Like we will post, Snyder will post on your social media platform.
Sure.
He will do an interview with you on your social media platform, but it's all for money.
Sure.
Right? And that's that NIL kind of stuff coming back.
Yeah.
And I think it's super interesting because as a dad, as I said earlier, I'm trying to make sure my son is safe. I'm trying to make sure my daughter is safe. I'm trying to make sure that they're getting their grades and done and everything else. And oh, by the way, where do I go to figure this out?
Right.
And Miami's already like, hey, we're going to take care of this for you. You just keep doing your job. We'll do our job.
We'll
over
jump
here.
in. We'll
Yeah.
jump in. Yeah.
Interesting times.
It is interesting times. Well, I have one bit of information that I brought this morning about this show called Nightline. It's called Impact. Actually, it's put on by Nightline, and it's on Hulu. Had a great chance to watch that the other night and go through it. It is, it's got the Cavender twins in there. It's got a lot of these stories that you and I are been talking about. It's great. It's a great show. It's a one-time series. I'm sure there's more to come at some time, but it's a one-time episode on a series of different topics that Nightline or this Impact is covering. But well worth the watch. Well worth the getting onto Hulu one night and seeing some of the background story of some of the athletes that they cover on this. So,
How do you do that? Well, I got a question for you.
okay.
So I'm a dad. I got kids, right? And I mean, we're going 100 miles an hour in a different direction every night. I mean, where do we as parents find that time to sit down in an hour, a 30-minute kind of thing,
Right.
and find out great information? I think that's as a parent, one of the hardest jobs is to find good information. And it's
is.
like, that's hopefully what we're doing right here. And I kind of asked that question knowing where this is like, we're trying to do some of that research for not just ourselves, but for you.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's pretty powerful.
Well, it's a challenge, right? And there's a method sometimes to the madness and sometimes there isn't, right?
Right.
So, and the challenge for me is to stay focused on the things that are important. And when you got camping and you've got sports in 3 different directions, and oh, by the way, they're still making sure that we get the schoolwork done, it can be challenging. You don't want to see my living room floor right now. It's got 3 tents laid out and way too much camping gear, but it's a lot of fun. These are fun times. They're interesting times. But I enjoy it, and I enjoy the challenge of making sure that we're at point A on time, and then the next activity that we've got to jump into. It is sometimes a struggle, and we've got 2 households going in 2 different directions, so it does make it makes it fun.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it's all about that community that we keep talking about. It all. I truly. I'm listening to your life, and I'm listening to it, going, wow. Where does he find the time, to watch a Hulu show, about this, and oh, by the way, it's not the most important thing today, but it will be in 3 or 4 years. It'll be a really important thing. Yeah. And I think that a lot of parents are sitting in that same place. And it's something for us as community that I keep going back to is like it takes all of us to be able to make it work. So.
Yeah, I'm a consumer of news, and because of that research attitude is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've had a background in market research, and I am constantly looking for new information. And so in my daily habits, on top of just my regular daytime job, I'm always looking for that information that helps me just do things better. And hopefully we instill that same kind of attitude in our kids. I know it's challenging sometimes, but hopefully there's that ability to have that enthusiasm about innovation and the universe around us. I think those are important mysteries that we all, as Renaissance men, try to figure out. Is this really, where do we need to go next, and what's the budding flower that will inspire us and also help us share with others around us.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, James, I wanted to talk a little bit. I want to share a story with you, actually, about when I first came to Austin, and I was attending the University of Texas, and had a really interesting job. I was planning on going into the legal profession, Ended up getting hired downtown with one of the law firms, McGinnis, Lockridge, Kilgore. Great firm, one of the big ones. They had just won the big Texaco case, which was a historic award judgment against the Texaco company. And the firm was a great place to work and just kind of learn things. And, as a young UT student who was needing a little bit of money in my pocket, it gave me a chance to get into that environment and work there. The first year, right after about the first year, I had worked there, and I was just a runner, just a kid who was taking documents and filing them and doing the things that needed to be done for the law firm. I was asked to do something a little bit unique. They had come to me. I had a little bit of knowledge about computers, not much, honestly. And they said, Stephen, we need someone to help us choose computers for our law partners. So these are the older men of this law firm, and no one had computers at this point in time on their desks. And this was all new technology. And they said, we need you to spend time. We're going to pay you to work with these new IBM personal computers, kind of a new concept, and you're going to do certain file requirements, copy files, do some spreadsheets and things, and then come back and give us a report on what it took for you to do those things. And based on that feedback that we get, we'll make a decision whether we're going to invest heavily into putting computers on every one of our computer or our partners' desks. So I thought, okay, kind of a neat assignment. Certainly enjoyed doing it and got to learn some new things about the IBM, latest, greatest IBM personal computers. And at that time, a lot of people had, it was all still kind of big mainframe and nodes approach to things. So having your own personal computer was different. So I spent a couple of weeks, kind of turned my report in, and about a month later, it didn't take too much longer. Next thing I know, all these computers, personal computers, were going on to the desks of the partners. And certainly the secretaries, the paralegals, they were all getting personal computers also. Right. So it was a very big investment into this technology. And I was curious because I did not give such a great report, and I pointed out some of the downsides of why the personal computer solutions for the partners may not be the best investment. And I later found out that it really kind of didn't matter what I said. They were not as worried about whether the partners would use them or not, because they all had their assistants and their staff. It was more of a prestige thing, and every single partner demanded to have a personal computer on their desk, whether they were going to use it or not.
Wow.
So there's a very interesting example of using technology for technology's sake. And I have many more of those stories where customers and projects that I've been on in the past where the technology wasn't always the right answer, but at times people get caught up in the use of the technology just because they think that's what's needed.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there, right?
I threw a lot at you.
Well, there's a little bit of vanity in that. It's like you don't even know what it is, but you want it kind of stuff. Yeah. But in our NIL world, there's a little bit of what you're talking about in this. I mean, we're dads, and one of the things that I hear is like, that desire to have something, maybe not even know what it is, but because it may be able to help us, we want it.
Yeah.
And in our world, right now, social media, I mean, goodness gracious, I've raised 2 kids, you've raised kids, and one of the things that, we've tried to find guardrails, we've tried to find, restrictions, and try to keep our kids safe, away from all the bad kind of actors and everything else. But in this world that what we're talking about, branding your kid or your kid branding themselves is almost an equal sign to an NIL deal. And that's a very, very scary proposition. As a dad, I've got a young kid, and I'm like, I do not want my kid even in there. They don't even have profiles yet.
Yeah.
And it's because we've tried to, helicopter shelter, whatever you want to call it, but we tried to put them in a place where they don't have both the risk and the reward of being in that world yet.
Yeah. So when we talk to Brian today, I'd love to ask him the question about what they're doing with their son, who is going through this recruiting process, and certainly they're further along that stage than you and I are. But I think there are some challenges and guidelines. So I've always considered myself an early adopter. So I usually have stayed abreast of the internet technologies and the latest, greatest tools that are out there. I've been on social media. I certainly have my Facebook and my LinkedIn page and all those things that we're supposed to do as entrepreneurs and businessmen to kind of make sure that we're out in the public domain. In that same breath, I know very successful businessmen that don't have some of those tools and have not needed it, and we can get into that rabbit hole, and no need to do that. But what I think I'm learning, and what I think is an interesting discussion, is the task of communication with the right people in the right way on some of these platforms. And about 4 years ago, when one of my older sons was playing football, one of the moms pulled me to the side and said, you guys need to get out on Twitter for him, because that is where the scouts are. Those are the coaches, and scouts are going to be looking for him out in that platform. And she gave me the example of how most of their recruiting process went through Twitter. Now, things are changing. TikTok is becoming a very viable, interesting platform. There's pros and cons on TikTok. We all know about some of the challenges that are going on with it. But there are also Instagram, and in a world of awareness and visibility, which is, if you think about the recruiting game, that is what we're challenged to do. Good athletes should always float up, but there is a little bit of a challenge to figure those tools out and make them work.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll put the old coach hat on here. Is one of the areas that we utilized was video analysis with all of our stuff, and we worked with several different types of platforms in that. But one of the more prominent ones was Huddle.
Yes,
and this is dated, but years before the pandemic, Huddle was being used then as a way to make highlight reels.
Yeah, still
basketball, football.
Yeah.
And so it seemed very innocuous in its early beginnings, because it would be like, one of the kids would send to his friend, hey, look at this play that I made, right? Or, you'd be in that situation where you're trying to, highlight this, or you're trying to show how a technique was done, and you were able to use that.
Yeah.
Now they're taking those moments themselves.
Yeah.
They're sending, they've got a friend, a family member that's at a camp and gets that one arm catch in the end zone that, nobody else can get, and he goes up and gets it and brings it down. And they're monetizing that moment.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're like going, well, that's what Huddle used to do, right?
Yeah.
And they're using it on these platforms, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook.
Yeah.
And that's where that media attention comes from. It's like, that's the brand you hope maybe that they get that attention from, not the one where, it's like, hey, all the bad acting kind of stuff. And that's that challenge as a dad. I'm like going, and I don't want to be that dad that is like, give me your phone. I need to do this. I there's that level of trust in between.
Yep.
But in that same moment, I hope that we raise our children well enough that they can choose right from wrong.
Right.
But they still need that that guidance, that wisdom that comes from parents, coaches and everything else to help them through those areas that, where the bad actors are. And they're out there. They're out here in this world every day.
Sure. Well, and so certainly having those conversations with your kids is a good starting point, right? Making sure and kind of reminding them that you may think that everyone that you are connecting with on the internet is a good person because you're naive and don't know any better. But they aren't, and you have to be careful with that. And then I think, going back to the idea of the huddle solution, I think we, again, rely on a little bit of a team effort or the community in starting to use these tools. So one of the things that I observed this year is while we were doing basketball, we had probably 4 or 5 parents that were doing a pretty good job of capturing those videos. And what happens, you were one of them. Yeah. You weren't on my team, but
I was.
But you were one that were out there.
Yeah.
So what happens is now you have this team effort of gathering the videos together and then being able to share. And what I do know will happen as we get up into high school, the high school platforms have gotten better at using the tools to capture the video and make that available back to the players. So those tools are progressing. Being able to have that footage is very important and will continue to be important. And the ease of how kids can get their clips is going to be important too. So those are things I think that as we continue down this NIL path, we're going to need to stay abreast of the latest tools.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, gone are those days of sitting in a locker room on Saturday watching black and white film of what you did Friday night as a team, right?
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're like going, yeah, that's great. And then you never see the tape again, right?
Yeah, so I'll challenge you on that. I know that coaches still do a lot of coach review with the team. So
right. I'm not
doesn't
saying,
go away.
No, that's not what I'm saying is like when we were in a different time
Sure,
and era,
right.
and we did that, we never saw the tape again after that.
Right. That's
and
a good
now
point.
There's, in my world, when, my middle schooler is out playing, we've got the video. As parents, we're sending it to each other going, did you get a shot of this
Right.
from a different angle because, we were in a bad spot? Or, hey, I broke this quarter down for us. And the coaches are like going, wow, we used to have to do this, and now the parents are doing this for us.
Parents are getting very involved.
Parents are getting very smart, very savvy. But again, the kids, when they see this, they see 2 things. They say, oh, that was a great shot. Oh, I got beat. But they're also saying, man, can I put that in a highlight reel for me? And they're doing it. They're sending it to each other, and they're building their brands from that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And that's the joy, right? So that's the fun of that community effort, and it's so nice and it's so endearing to have parents reach out to me and say, "Hey, got a great shot of your kid coming around the corner, getting ready to block someone." So those are the moments that, and then we get to share them. So, I think just kind of thinking through this. What the opportunity is. Social media exists. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Facebook, LinkedIn are all going to be there. TikTok, Instagram are going to be some of the tools right now. I think that parents need to understand that despite some of the challenges with those tools, they are good solutions if used properly. Always consider the privacy and the security issues. There are settings that allow parents to keep control of that content and keep control of the distribution of that content. However, if you're going to do awareness and visibility strategies, you're going to have to come out from behind the curtain and show off some of those videos. So you need to think about that. I think there are great resources out there. I think, checking with some of those older parents who've been there, done that, asking them, and even asking coaches, hey, what is the policy at our high school? How do you allow for parents to post things? There used to be a control aspect of it, and there used to be some rules in place about not posting kids' videos out there. It's just unmanageable. I don't think the schools try to get into that. arena anymore. I know even our local Boy Scout troop has kind of backed away from how we can control some of the content that's getting out there. Now, there's certainly some criminal, issues that if people are, doing things way beyond that line, then that's a whole total different discussion.
Sure.
But hopefully in this arena, parents are being astute, paying attention to the content that goes out, and making sure that they're talking to their athletes to let them know of those challenges.
Interesting. There's going to be a lot of development by the time our kids are done through high school. And yeah, what will be the next TikTok? What will be the next Instagram? Because that as we grow, those social media channels will too.
Yeah, a lot of tools out there. Hopefully there'll be continued improvement in how they're used and how they're a benefit to parents.
Agreed.
So just, we're excited. James, we're spending a little bit of time with Brian Morgan. His son Ridge is in the process of going to the next level, and what that ends up being, we're going to see, and we'll find out. I've got Brian on the show with us here. Brian, tell us just a little bit about the story, how Ridge got interested in baseball, and how that progressed.
Sounds good. We basically, when my kids were growing up, we were trying out different sports. He tried out hockey and soccer and some other sports. And basically one day he decided that he wanted to do baseball. So we took him to the YMCA and we joined one of their coach pitch leagues. And he started, crushing the baseball, and he just loved it and just kind of started falling in love with the game. And that kind of transpired to going to Balcones and starting kid pitch at 8 years old. Sounds young for most kids, but for him, he just loved it, got on the mound, played the game. And that just kind of transpired into, the 10U, where he went over to Town and Country, which you guys are familiar with.
Sure.
Ended up winning the Syntex 10U tournament. Pitch there. But one of the questions you were asking, like, how did you know that he was like going to the, he was somebody that's a little bit different? And I think baseball players in general are a little bit different. They have their own little quirks, kind of a deal. They beat to a different drum. They're more excited about the game. They're more excited about learning how to play it, the ins and outs of it. They love the numbers, the statistics of it. And Rich really fell into that when he moved to Town and Country and 10U. I remember the game that you kind of were like, wow, he's a little bit different, when we were facing all the other teams. And Rich threw his first pitch on his first game. They let him, do his first start. And he threw that baseball and it whizzed past that guy, and the catcher couldn't catch it. And one of the ladies in the back said, "He's going to kill somebody." I hate to say that on deal. I don't know if that was all right or not, but because he was throwing like 50 in a place where most of the kids were throwing, 35. So it was just a different dynamic. And that, I think, changed the aspect of maybe he's going to actually do well at this job, do well at playing baseball. And so that's when we started, considering the idea of moving into select ball, that kind of stuff.
Brian, one of the things that I heard you start with was how he loved the game, that passion, right? And
Yes.
I'm a coach and a dad. And, my kiddos are out there. And one of the things that, we're kind of talking within this NIL discussion is how it usually starts with that passion, that love for the game, and, how that takes them and takes us starts the journey for us, right? And, as a parent, it's like, how do we understand when that passion is more than the kids, and it becomes the parents kind of sometimes. Can you speak a little bit about how we as parents can complement as well as assist through coaching, through, taking them to these different opportunities that arise that can help further their passion and love for the game?
Absolutely. I really, it actually started in 10U. We talked about the Centex, the CTX tournament. Knowing that he was super passionate about it, in that series, we ended up going to the championship round. The game before, Ridge had been playing shortstop, got a crazy bounced ball, came up, hit him in the face, busted his nose up really good the day before. And my wife panicked, took him to the doctor. He was all beat up. And the next day, he was adamant. They were going to pull him out, put him on the bench, and he was adamant about pitching that next game. And so he went out there, busted up, pitched the game, won the turn, won that game with his teammates. And it was like his love for the game and wanting to play started there. And then that's when we actually started reaching out. We started getting him, some batting lessons here or there, but he's done it, gone to DBAT. You get some training at those areas, but a lot of times, those are more money grab places. The one-on-one with your coaches, the higher level of the coach that you have is going to make the bigger difference. I'm a firm believer of that. Batting in groups is fine as long as you have a quality batting coach that is going to spend the time with you, but individual is really where they really make the biggest strides.
Yeah. So, and to that point is like, as a dad, how do I recognize? Is it me that recognizes, or is it, an outside coach, or is it, a family friend or one of their teammates that come and say, hey, Ridge is something special, and then that's when that ignites us a little bit, right? When we hear that and we're saying, well, how do I help him further his passion, his love, his joy? Those are moments that, as parents, we're looking for in our kids. And it's like that step that you talk about, where it's like, that's when we started investing, and finding those individual coaches, finding those outside entities that will help him. Am I hearing that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So, that's a really good question. So, all of this stuff transpires over years. It's not something that you get to a certain moment and you kind of see it. It's gradual feedback over the years, but more importantly, it's at what level you're playing with. So when Ridge he went from, 10U CTX, which is playing rec ball. Then he went into 11U, where he ended up playing for the Rattlers, we went transition from rec ball to select ball. Thank you.
Yeah.
When he made the transition to select ball, we weren't really sure about doing that. I mean, we knew that people were going out playing select ball, even at a much younger age. Like, we had been approached when he was 10 to start doing that. And we were just like, it's just so expensive, being on limited funds and not having that being able to throw, $600-800 at a season compared to going and playing rec ball for $100. It's a whole different dynamic of money spent. There's a lot of, equipment requirements, bats, you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, that kind of stuff.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Right. So we weren't really ready for that. And so we kind of kept putting it off. And then Aaron Nunash at Town and Country, who has been working out there for a long time, put together the Rattlers. And he kept pursuing Ridge, coming out, and he basically built his team around Ridge. He kept coming out to watch him pitch and was like, I can make a team with Ridge as a starter. That'll give me some pitching. I can add some extra pitching. And we started out as AA. It was nothing fantastic. It was a struggle. He took guys from Town and Country, pulled them together, and we went and we battled for 3 to 4 seasons. And ended up turning from a AA to a AAA team. And actually, in the end, we won some Texas State tournaments and stuff, and it was great. And it taught Ridge how to build from the bottom. A lot of kids want to start at the top, but a lot of times, if you don't know how to play baseball, it makes it really hard to be great later on because you don't understand the game. And if you don't study the game, you're not going to be great at the game.
Yeah, and you shared with me that Ridge has a desire and a passion about studying the game, and I think that's fantastic. Tell me a little bit more about NIL and how you first got exposed to NIL. Give us that background. And, we're all newcomers in this area, so it's a lot of changing scenarios and it's a little bit of wild, wild west. But tell us how that's come into your arena at this point.
The NIL didn't come into, we didn't really start hearing about it until Ridge was really talking to some of the higher end colleges. And not all the colleges, from what I understand, offer NIL. He's actually verbally committed right now to Texas, and Texas is a big supporter of NIL.
Yeah, we're both alums.
Yep. And so they do a lot more promoting than, let's say, some of the smaller schools. So the difference between like a NIL package for, support at a D1 major Big 12 compared to if you're going to a D3 and you're probably not getting any NIL money from them because they're not going to have the support. So kind of understanding that part of it kind of gives you an idea of when you're pressing and trying to, get to that next level to be able to compete. And everybody believes they can compete at D1 level, but you kind of, as you grow up and as you start going through those tournaments at 15U, 16U, 17U, you start to really see the kids start really separating themselves because they start bulking up. They start getting their man bodies. Dynamics change. Some of the guys that were fast when they were young that grew really fast, we know people that they were amazing. At 12U, they were super duper tall. They were taller than everybody. They had beards, and you're like, who is this kid? They go to USA. They're on the tournament series, and they're playing national ball. And then now you look at them today, and they're, seniors at high school, and they're still, 6 foot. They still have a beard, but everybody else has kind of passed them up. So I know I kind of got off topic, but
no, it's a good topic. Trust me.
Yeah. The NIL, basically, whenever with Ridge knows that Texas has NIL. And so basically what ends up happening is that you'll get whatever your scholarship allotment is if they decide to commit you. So Ridge is right now a verbal. So everybody goes, well, what does a verbal mean? And how does that transpire? The schools now are going out and they're recruiting all of these kids 2 to 3, some of them 4 years. Like you were talking about your son being a catcher. They're going after 8th graders now. And the deal is that you have to realize that they're trying to commit kids way earlier than they used to. And that commitment is just verbal. It's nothing that you have nothing in writing. You have just their word that they're committing to you. The schools, though, are getting to the point where once they're committing, they're not trying to uncommit. Now, if you don't live up to the expectations, of course, they could drop you all the way up to your signing date, which is, I think it's October this year, I think is when Ridge will sign. And so that will be when they actually agree to the whole package, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Then what you're relying on the NIL money is, so they're going to give you so much scholarship money that you can have. There's a difference between going to a state school, which is going to be, like Texas is $32,000 a year. But if you go to Vanderbilt, which was one of his other choices that he was working on trying to get into, that's a $72,000 school. So there's a big differential.
I'm gonna interrupt you there because you've said something that really has caught my attention. So you're telling me that the collectives, and these are the schools, this is that NIL group that comes together. The collective are telling you by coming to the University of Texas, we have a $32,000 NIL package already for you to start with. Is that correct?
No, the 32 is that's what the tuition board,
that's
and
the
that's
scholarship
the
part of it.
cost. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
solid cost of what it costs to go to Texas a year.
Got it.
So each college is different. That's why I was saying Vandy, like a TCU, any of the private schools are going to be in the 70s. If for,
Got it.
and that's what you're going to pay a year.
Sure.
So what you're trying to do is leverage whatever the scholarship money, or like Vanderbilt has I don't know if it's called, it's not like a grant that they give you. It's like, I can't remember what they called it, but some of their guys, if you're one of the top players they get picked for that school year, then you can get a full ride. And basically they have donations from all their alumni that put into a pool, and then they are able to give that money to those players. And then on top of that money, whatever it be, whether you get whatever you get for your scholarship, then you roll into NIL if your school qualifies.
Sure.
If you talk to a majority of the guys, if you're getting a third, scholarship, you're doing really good. If you're getting, half, you should be really considering it. And if you were to get a full ride, you definitely should be, really considering it. That's one of those deals where they're going to pay you to play baseball. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So now that you got your scholarship, whatever that amount might be, depending on, how many they're going to pull in that class. So each one of the classes, they will pick, Texas right now has 14 commits for 2024 with the portal and stuff like that. They have limited the amount of commits they're going to bring in every year. So the amount of freshmen that are going to be allowed on that field have gotten smaller. Once you get your scholarship money and they offer you you get NIL support, then whatever, it could be different for everybody. Hopefully when you get your NIL money and you're getting your recognition, probably when you're starting off as a freshman, you're not going to have a lot you perform for that team is going to dictate the amount of NIL money. So there's not a set amount. I think everybody is going to be a little bit different, and you need to have that expectations. But if you can get, let's say, even if it's $30,000 or $40,000 over that 4 years, if it's enough to offset what you didn't get in some of your scholarship money or any of that kind of stuff, that's going to be great. But if you're one of the top guys and you're producing and you're a major player for that team, and every time you go out, the fans are just super excited about you, then your NIL money is going to be much more. And whether it's going to be six figures or where it's going to be seven figures, is just going to determine on what kind of player you are. There's more to the game than just playing the game. There's also being baseball. And you also have to have an image. How well is your image, and how well can you talk to, I think that came up a lot too, was how well can you socialize with other people as well as media? That's something that it's hard to teach. It's something that you have to go over. It's something that you don't think about until those college coaches are calling you and asking you questions and wanting to know and get to know you. And I don't think everybody really realizes when they ask you, hey, can I call you every week? Because that's a big deal. You don't understand that they want to know who you are. And I think one of the lessons that we also learned is that when those college coaches are calling you and wanting to talk to your kid, it's very important that you let them be a part of that, not you be a part of that. And it's a hard thing for a parent, especially when you've driven yourself all these years to be all part of everything that they are and giving them all the training that they need to get to that point. At a point, you have to let them be the person that they're going to be. And those coaches and those schools are going to love them for who they are, or they're not. But if you're trying to influence those coaches, then that could actually have a negative impact.
Brian, wow, that's a lot. I mean, I sit here as a dad of a kid in middle school, and I think to myself, is like, I know nothing. I'm basically in elementary learning about this, and one of the things that just jumps out to me is like how I'm not equipped to be an attorney, an accountant, an agent. And I mean, what kind of advice would you give to those parents that, their kid is coming into this? Do they need all that? Do you need that kind of representation in your world as your kid comes into high school, and if they get pulled in that direction?
Well, I think it depends on the kid. I mean, if you're out there and you're playing national ball and you're getting the recognition and you're ranked really high, so Perfect Game, Five Tool, all the major tournament series that are out there, they're ranking everybody. Everything that you can do, you can find out where you rank in the state. It doesn't give an accurate, reading of everybody because it really dictates the national players. So one of the things that you always have to ask yourself is how far are you guys ready to go? Are you ready to commit to joining playing rec ball and spending, a couple $100 a year? Or are you ready to go to select ball and spend anywhere from $600 for a little local team that plays at Town and Country to going to maybe a state team? And not everybody realizes this, but state teams basically they'll travel in the state of Texas. Maybe they'll hit Louisiana, like on the quarters. They're not going to go too far. But when you do that, you're not only just paying for that select season, which is probably going to be $1,800, depending on the team that you go with. You're going to also be paying all of the hotel stays, so that you start ringing up $200 a day on a 3-day tournament. That's, $600 every weekend. They play typically 3 weekends out of every month. When you're doing that, you're doing spring, summer. You're also doing, fall. Once you get to high school, you're just playing summer ball. Very few players, especially pitchers, aren't playing fall ball unless they're just playing position only. And that's a big deal. But once you move to national ball, the game seriously starts changing, but you get more recognition because that's where the scouts are going to be. They're going to be at the big games watching all the top teams. Yeah. And so when that transpires, then your dollar amount that you're paying went from maybe a season that cost you $3,000 to $5,000. Now your seasons are costing you $10,000 to $15,000. So and that doesn't include training. That doesn't include any of the other stuff that has to go on. But we played national ball Ridge did in 15U. We had 36 days of hotel to do those tournaments, because once you get to high school ball, you're not playing on the weekend. You're playing anywhere from an average of a 4-day tournament, and then some of the tournaments are 7 to 8 days. So you're gone like pretty much almost all summer. Like this coming summer that we're going, we'll be pretty much gone endlessly. I think there's like 2 days every week that we won't be at the house.
Well, Brian, it just sounds like, I hear all that, and it's like there's a team behind Ridge. I know that mom and dad are part of that team, but there's a team of coaches behind them. When does Ridge become a business in your mind? Or does he handle this? You talked about him having that. You talked about how he's having that presence now, and that media savvy, and that ability to talk to coaches and stuff. But do you see a place where you keep him in the performance arena and not worrying about all this other stuff that is happening? Or is that something that he wants to take on for himself and run the business of Ridge?
I definitely don't think of him as a business. And our position is that we're grateful for every step that he makes. So I know that he's like verbally committed to Texas, right? But we still haven't gotten there. And I think a lot of parents, they're working 4 to 5 steps down the road. And that's where they think they should be, even though they haven't really worked on today. And so our mindset is more of, we do the training. We can only try to get better, because in Ridge's deal, he's not going to just walk on a UT's field and be a starter without hard work. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take, to knock off, they're going to have, 12, 13 pitchers in that bullpen, and they're all going to be 3 to 4 years older than he is. And if you look at a portal kid, he's going to be at almost 7 years older. So keeping that in mind, I think, don't lose track of the focus of, it's more important to train. It's more important to have those high-end coaches like you were asking. We go to Scott Lacey, who is the pitching coach for Southwestern in Georgetown. He's been amazing. He knows his stuff. He helps a lot of the pros. They come in, he works with them. And if he's working with them and you're like next to Chris Paddock, I'm like, we're watching him teach Chris Paddock and help him condition. And you're like, if he can do that for Chris Paddock, he can do it for us. Once you start getting in the know and you start getting with the right people, you start seeing the real people that are really that they're working with, that let you know that they're heading you in the right direction. And that's really, we've been fortunate enough to go to people that really know what they're talking about. Because there's a lot of guys out there that you pay a lot of money, but you have to be willing to spend money. Like, we have a budget, it's not like, hey, we have a little bit of money, but it's typically, I would say, about $1,200 a month just in training. So you have to be ready to commit that. But for a pitcher, you're probably doing 4 bullpens minimum with your coach every single month. And then that doesn't include all your agility training. You should be on a full weight program. Now, don't overdo yourself. If you're going to school and you're powerlifting, because they are really bad. But one of the things that I was really big on was teaching the kids, getting them into True Grind, which is a great place. It's in Cedar Park. They do a lot of, they do an evaluation on you. They put you on your own program. They help you build slowly, but doing all the stuff you need to do to prevent injury is super important. And that's one of the things we've been very fortunate with, is because we do the training, we do the stretching, we do everything that we need to do to make our body as strong as possible to make sure that we don't get hurt. And I'm a firm believer of that, and it's worth the extra money and time. But, as parents, I think you really have to understand it's a commitment. You watch the guys go up there and you watch the guys do the training and all the programs and stuff. The same people are there every single day that are mean real business. If you're just going 1 or 2 times a day and you just you notice that you're like, oh yeah, it's just okay, we don't have to go. That's the wrong mentality. You get into a routine, and if you're in a routine and you're in the zone, you're going to progress. And if you're not, and you're just okay with just letting it slide, it's not going to move in the direction that you need it to.
Brian, what an inspiring story. I really appreciate the time that you've taken today to share this with us. We're going to look forward to continuing to watch and see what Ridge does and where he goes. It sounds like he's got, a huge horizon in front of him. We wish all the best of luck for you and your family, and certainly through the hard work that Ridge is doing and the support of you and his family. I'm sure that there are going to be exciting moments and times ahead of you guys.
Oh, yes. It's going to be a great journey. And it has been a great journey. And if, I would tell you, I wouldn't change a thing. I'll just kind of share this. So when the kids got to be about, 12 years old, I told them, I said, we were doing all this different stuff, all these different sports still. They did karate, they got black belts, they did, I just kept them busy, kept them moving, kept them, I wanted them to always be doing something. And then we got to about 12 years old, and I said, now it's time for you guys to be great at something. You need to pick one thing that you want to do, that you want to put your effort into to be great. So we're not doing multiple sports. We're not doing all that. They both chose baseball. The only difference between my 2 kids is that they both have all the same training. The only difference is one is 6'3" and the other one is 5'10". And one of them throws 90 plus and the other one throws low 70s. But their stuff is just almost as good. Doesn't matter what speed it is, because they both had the opportunity to advance in that. And so I thought, looking back, that was the best decision I ever made, is, making them focus, and that gave them determination, and they do it. Like, I don't do it for them. I just take them there and give them the opportunity to do it. And so, you can't force them to do it, but when you set the program and you set up what you're going to do and you just tell them, they're more excited about going to do it than if you just like, I'm going to make you go do this. You can't do that. You gotta give them the option for the program and then go ahead. Nope, it's time. We have lifting today. We got agility today. Let's go do that. And they just know it's Tuesday, and that's what you're going to do. And that training over the years adds up. Because if you're in 14U and you're not working out and doing a good lifting program, and stretching and all that stuff, and really working it, you're already behind the curve because everybody else is already doing it and passing you up.
Brian, what a great message. We appreciate, again, the time that you spent with us today. And we're going to continue to watch and see what Ridge does. We know there's good things ahead of them, and we certainly want to follow that journey a little bit too.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting for sure. Well, I appreciate it, guys. And if you guys want to touch base back again, just let me know.
All right. Well, James, there we go. That's just the perfect example of what this show is all about. It's having that advice and talking to parents who are there, right in the middle of what NIL is about, and right in the middle of not only the NIL part of the equation, but the kids who are going into these opportunities. And, for some kids, it's rarefied air. And for some parents, it's certainly an opportunity. He talks about the D1 experience because that's where they are. Now, there is still D2, D3 things that are going on, and there are going to be parents that are still going to have to figure out where are we going to go with our kids? Where are we going to end up with a college program or college athletics? And how do we fit in? And there's still a lot of advice that Ridge is going through that Brian shared with us. And I thought it was just a great story and a great opportunity.
Absolutely. And what a story. I look forward to following that for the next few months and seeing if he lands at Texas and what that journey looks like for him. But in addition to just the sporting aspect, what a lot of great parenting advice. It's like, be careful here, and you could hear it in Brian's voice of like, this took more than money. This took, energy and logistics, and it took, things that we just didn't know until we were in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And it sounded like to me when I was listening to it that switch happened in middle school.
Yeah.
And that switch came with like a commitment, and it came from that passion. And it wasn't just his; it was everyone's passion in his community, and that's exciting. I think that's what our program really speaks to, and I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us.
So, like our video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so that you can get notification of when our next episode's out. This is the Parent Portal Show.